Good morning. I take it we're all settled, so good morning to everyone and welcome to this formal meeting of the Public Protection and Community Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Nigel Pepper, Chairman of this committee. Councillor Adam Stokes, my Vice Chairman of this committee, is also in attendance. Can I remind you that the audio-visual feed of this formal public meeting is being recorded and will be accessible via the County Council's website following today's meeting. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we carry on further. There's no fire drill planned this morning. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, we need to leave the council chamber through the rear doors and leave the building through the reception into the front car park, where we will wait until further instructions. Can I remind everyone to ensure their mobiles, laptops and iPads are on silent, please. We will now move on to the formal agenda. Agenda item 1 is apologies for absence and replacement councillors. Over to you, Trina.
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor Brockway, Councillor Sneath and Councillor King, but Councillor King is observing the meeting via Teams today. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, and thank you. Item 2, declarations of council's interests. Do any members wish to declare any interest which may have not been declared on their declaration of pecuniary interest forms? No one coming forward, so we'll move on to item 3. Minutes of the previous meeting, meeting of the Public Protection and Community Scrutiny Committee held on the 14th of December. This will be for accuracy only. I'll just run through the pages 5 to 15 of the agenda. So firstly, page 5, Councillor Stokes.
Although I wasn't in attendance, I do note in the paragraph towards the bottom of the page, Councillor Ashton's name is spelt incorrectly.
Okay, got Aston there instead of Ashton. Okay, thank you for that. So page 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and finally page 15. Do I have a proposer and a seconder for those, please? Councillor Gray proposed, Councillor Mr Clark seconded. Thank you. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Okay, those against? Any abstentions? One abstention, Councillor Key. Thank you.
I wasn't present, Mr Chairman, so...
Sorry, Councillor Lee. So Councillor Key and Councillor Lee, thank you. Thank you, those minutes are agreed as a correct and accurate record. Item 4 is announcements by the Chairman, Executive Councillors and Lead Officers. We have a busy agenda this morning with 2 pre-decision items to be taken. I'd like to ask officers to only summarise the key points of their reports and also to remind members of the importance of succinct and concise questions and comments. Thank you. I'd also like to welcome all those executive councillors here this morning and also their executive support councillors. Good morning. Any announcements by the executive councillors, please? Councillor Corey.
Thank you and good morning, Chairman. No announcement, just to let you know, because I have no items on today's agenda, I have to leave for another meeting in about 20 minutes. So please excuse me, thank you.
Thank you. Any senior officers wish to make any comments at this point? No. Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to the agenda proper. Item 5 is the Revenue and Capital Budget Proposals 2022 to 2023. This item is on pages 17 to 23 of the agenda pack and enables the committee to consider and comment on the budget implications for the Council's Public Protection and Community Services prior to the executive meeting on the 8th of February, when it will make its final budget proposals for 2022-2023. The report will be presented by Keith Norland, who is Head of Finance. Our actions for this committee is that we're invited to consider this report and provide comments on the budget proposals for consideration by the Executive at its meeting on the 8th of February. So, Keith, if you're there, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
As the Chairman's already said, this report presents the budget proposals for the next financial year. On pages 17 to 19 of the pack, I provided the context of the 2021 spending review and provisional local government settlement. That's more by way of background to the overall council position, as most of the announcements were not directly relevant to these services. There's still no clarity on the implementation of local government funding reforms, so we're again presenting a budget proposal for just a single year. The Executive approved the budget proposals for consultation at their meeting on the 5th of January. That included a proposed 3% increase in council tax, which is the implementation of the 3% adult social care precept deferred from last year. The proposed revenue budgets for these services are presented in Table A towards the bottom of page 20 of the pack. The table shows the movements from the current year's budgets in terms of unavoidable cost pressures and expected savings. The narrative in the report details all of the changes, but I think it's fair to say there aren't really any material movements from current year budgets. The largest cost pressure is in fire and rescue and arises from increases in training costs, urban search and rescue, and investments to maintain the stability of the mobilising system and to maintain the delivery of the Community Fire Protection Programme. In total, that amounts to 131,000, which is just about 0.5% of the fire service budget. The table excludes any pay inflation, but that has been budgeted for centrally at 2% and has been held pending any agreement of any pay award. Turning to capital budgets, Table B at the top of page 22 sets out the proposed capital programme. Again, there's not a great deal to say other than some rephasing of existing project expenditure. There's been no changes to the previously agreed capital programme related to these services. Just touching on timescales for the rest of the budget process, a consultation meeting with local business representatives, trade unions and other partners is scheduled to take place on Friday. The proposals are now live on Let's Talk Lincolnshire, with the opportunity for the public to comment, and the Executive will make its final budget proposals on the 8th of February, which will then be considered by full council on the 18th of February. Hopefully that summarises the main points. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Keith. I'd now like to invite members of the committee to comment on this item. Councillor Stacks, have we any speakers? Councillor Mr Clark.
Thank you very much. I notice on Table B on page 22, several headings have actually got zero expenditure against them. Are we likely to receive any expenditure against those? Is this a bit of a gamble, or have we ascertained that no items will need to be replaced during the next financial year?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. Keith, are you able to reply to that, please?
Yeah, mostly they're run-offs of existing projects, so they're projects that have been running in the current year, so they have figures in the 21-22 column, but there is no further expenditure expected in future years, and therefore it's not included in the other two columns of the table.
Okay, thank you. Keith, on that same table, Table 2, there's, if I'm reading it right, substantial increases proposed in the budget from 2021-22 to 2022-23, fire and rescue, around about £4.4 million. There's only a few short lines there with the explanation about training, etc. Is it possible to put a bit more meat on the bone for us there, please?
Yep, certainly. I mean, it's not particularly an increase in budget. It's a continuous programme of replacement of fire vehicles and associated equipment. And the difference between the 2 years is more in terms of timing of expenditure. The programme has suffered some delays as a result of COVID and Brexit delays causing difficulty in materials coming into the country. So it's been rephased in terms of expectation of the expenditure in next year. In terms of what it does, it's the replacement of largely the fire appliances and the equipment that goes on them.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Mrs Clark.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Chair. On page 18, final bullet point of 1.2, it says there'll be a number of other specific grants will be received, although the amounts to council are not yet known. Can you tell me, when do you expect to get that information, and will we be notified of it? Thank you.
Over to you, Keith.
Yes, we'd expect to get that in the final settlement announcement in mid-February, and so that will be built into the budget papers that go forward to full council on the 18th.
Okay, thank you. No one else wishing to speak? Just gone back to that table B and fire and rescue. I think you answered that quite succinctly there, Keith, but I know there's things in the pipeline like a new fire station for Leverton. Is that included in those expenses for properties?
No, that is purely fire equipment that is in that table. The property budget goes through corporate property and is reported under the commercial capital budget. Leverton is not yet currently budgeted for, but it is sort of recognised as a future commitment potentially against the new capital developments contingency.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bootroyd.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, at the moment, it obviously sits in the property budget, and we're currently going through negotiations on the land, but and then we'll look to put that into planning. So we're currently looking at costs for the planning side of it, but that's as far as we've got on Leverton Fire Station at the moment.
Okay.
Just as an update.
Thank you for the explanation. Thank you. No one else. Okay. Well, the proposal is that I move that we receive the report and that her comments, as recorded, are shared with the Executive at its meeting on the 8th of February. I've proposed, do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Stokes has seconded. We'll now vote on this item. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. That is agreed and carried. We'll move on to item 6, which is the registration service fee setting 2022 to 23 to 2024 to 2020. A bit of background noise. Sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just I've got feedback.
Okay.
Shall I try again? Right. I was just going to introduce this paper, Chairman, if that's all right with you. And then I will introduce James, who will cover it in more depth. As you will see, the last time that the registration service fees were looked at in any great detail was in 2013. And if you then flick to Appendix A, you will see that there is a difference between the cost of providing the service and the income that comes in. My intention and hope is to ensure that at least this service covers its costs, and that's all I intend to do. It's not a money-making venture. And just to reinforce that point, you will see that under the current model, and this will remain, that there is a statutory ceremony fee, fixed fee of £46 for anyone who wants a simple ceremony or indeed is on a low wage. I think that the other point that I would like to draw to your attention is the fact that we are moving to use a digital platform so that those wishing to book ceremonies can actually do a lot of the work themselves. We've in the past been exceedingly generous when people have wanted to either cancel or change, and we are going to be slightly stricter as far as timelines and deadlines for changing. I think James has got 1 or 2 horror stories lined up for you, if you want to hear them. But I think on that note, Chairman, I will now pass over to James to now give you a little bit more detail.
Thank you, Councillor Woolley. So over to you, James, for the horror stories.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning all. As Councillor Woolley has mentioned, the current fee structure was introduced in 2013, and since then no formal review has taken place. As stated, all ceremony types at the moment are below cost recovery, and the shortfall is then passed on to the taxpayer. As Councillor Woolley has mentioned, the proposal does not touch on the affordable weddings and the statutory weddings, which are £46. Lincolnshire operates the most extensive coverage of statutory ceremonies of any registration service in the country. These are currently delivered from 11 registration offices. This will continue, and as a service, we'll also look to improve and expand on this offering. The current fee structure is outdated, unjustifiable, and as mentioned, all are below cost recovery. The fees are set county-wide, and there's no variation of venue, which limits the service's ability to extend its portfolio of venues, which is out of line with other local authorities. The model also includes a standard ceremony, which is a limited product, and as many authorities have done since 2013, they've moved away from this model to a tiered system based on venue and full ceremony offering. Extensive benchmarking of other local authorities has taken place. There's a wide range of ceremony fees, but the average peak time Saturday wedding sits in the range of £350 to £400 for the register office and £550 to £600 in approved premises. As other local authorities, many are currently reviewing their fee structure, but this proposal would still put Lincolnshire towards the cheaper end when compared with neighbouring authorities. In addition, as Councillor Woolley has mentioned, there is a large transformation programme within the registration service, and a new digital platform which will be introduced this year would look to make further cost savings. A full list of the fees proposed are contained within the report, but the initial increase of 16% followed by a 3% would be in place across the county. The proposed changes, if accepted, will come in on the 1st of April and would be displayed for the public on the Council's website. In addition to the booking fees for ceremonies, the service is looking to introduce a number of service fees to cover the costs of holding ceremonies which are later cancelled and rearranged. These include a deposit, an amendment fee, and a fee for ceremonies held after 5 p.m. Again, these fees have been benchmarked and are in line with other local authorities' registration services across the country. In addition, we're also proposing a clear cancellation and refund policy. On average, the service has over 200 short-term ceremony cancellations per year. These slots, which are cancelled within 4 weeks prior to the ceremony, cannot be used by other couples due to the time period required to give legal notice. The most we have had in the last operational year is couples cancelling their weddings 5 times and rearranging 5 times. And also, we have recently had one who cancelled on the day before the ceremony because the daughter's shoes had not arrived. Again, these are not there to make money, but these are there to protect the ceremony slots we've got available and maximise the appointment availability to our residents so we can meet the demand. That concludes my summary, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Key, followed by Councillor Lee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I haven't declared an interest in this item. I used to be a marriage registrar myself, a peripatetic marriage registrar for this council, and I'm now a funeral celebrant, and I didn't declare an interest because this item relates solely to weddings, which I don't do. So I do have some experience, although it is some years ago. The first thing I would like to say is about cancellations. I really do agree with this charge. I remember when I was taking weddings, on more than one occasion, we even had times when the couple just didn't turn up because they'd fallen out in the morning or something had happened. So we were paid, obviously, for turning up, and we were the only ones there. So that does happen, and I sympathise with the service for that. I would just like to ask about, and I think I know the answer, but it leads into my next question. What exactly is a statutory service? I think we need that explaining to us first, if that would be okay. Thank you. And then I've got a question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The statutory ceremony is the legal minimum requirement as a ceremony to get married in England and Wales, and it also includes civil partnerships. So it is the very basic legal minimum to enter into a marriage or a civil partnership. There's no bells and whistles around it. There's no enhancements around the ceremony. It is just a legal minimum requirement.
May I just ask then, are guests allowed at a statutory service?
No, so there is a requirement in law to have 2 witnesses, and that is it. So it's the couple and 2 witnesses, no wider guests.
That's what I thought. So it just leads me into my next question to do with the standard ceremony, which at the moment is £100, I believe. And I'm looking at somewhere where I live near Sleaford, people who want a small wedding with just some guests are looking at an increase from £100 up to 300 and something pounds. I've not quite got the figure here. £340 to have some guests at their service in Sleaford, which is a huge increase. And that's my concern, that it is actually it's going to be expensive if anybody wants any guests at all at their wedding other than the witnesses. And I did wonder whether that had been considered. Thank you.
Thank you. It had, which is why we're introducing smaller ceremonies at 4 locations across the county as a middle offering, and then we have the larger offering, which is starting at £340, which is below the cost of many other local authorities. So we do have a wide provision of all ceremony types within Lincolnshire.
Had you considered having the small ceremonies at all offices, like the standard ones are at the moment? Thank you.
We have considered that, but the decision we're looking at is actually on room capacity and venue. And where we have got our larger rooms, they would look to attract a larger fee. And where we've got the smaller rooms, they would look to be in line with the smaller fee.
My only comeback on that would perhaps be that the bigger venues who have more seats could probably offer the cheaper the cheaper services at off-peak times in the week, just to give people still that opportunity to not have to pay the £340 in areas like mine. Thank you.
Thank you. James, do you want to come back on that one?
Yes, so we do have an off-peak pricing structure within that. So we've got during the week, a weekend, and then we've got a Sunday and bank holiday structure, which again is in line with other local authorities.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to make 3 comments. First of all, I completely agree with having a cancellation charge. I think that's an absolutely reasonable thing to do. And I'm sorry I didn't catch, if people cancelled for a really good reason, like the bride or groom were ill, would they still get charged that amount? Because I wouldn't want to see that. And I mean a proper reason, not just a daft one. The second thing, I'm pleased to see there's an affordable option. But I would argue, you know, is it really truly affordable to everybody? If you were on universal credit, would that be affordable? And the third thing, I totally understand that it's a long time since 2013 and why you'd be looking at this, but I just think it's a really bad time to be increasing the charge for anything. I mean, we were told, was it last week or the week before, about the tele-licence fee. You know, we don't want to be charging people anything that they don't have to pay. And people have seen increases in petrol, in food, and now huge increases in the cost of heating their homes. And I would argue that it's not a good time to be increasing anything at the moment. And whilst I won't vote against this, I won't vote for it for that very reason. I will abstain. Thank you.
Okay, James, 3 questions there for you.
Yes, so on the first one, yes, absolutely. Exceptional circumstances will be considered by the service. We do that now, and we fully appreciate that there will be some, and we'll also take into account should there be any further imposed restrictions by central government, which means that ceremonies can't take place. then again, we will look at those. The £46, that's a standard ceremony across the county, so it's set by central government, and that, again, like with all the others, is well below actual cost recovery. We have no say on that, and that can be increased at any time. Yes, absolutely, take on board the points around the fee charges, but what we want to do is we want to be able to grow the service and provide a better offering for our residents, and we feel that the fees do need to increase, because we're at that point now where the difference between the cost of actually delivering the service and actually being able to do it is huge.
Okay, James, so you think the fee increases are justified at this time?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stokes.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. No, I mean, I'm of the opinion that we do need to break even on all services, in at least break even. So I'm just looking at the figures. Obviously, we're going to increase year by year, and I'm assuming 23, 24 is when we're looking to fully break even. And are we expecting a small surplus in 24, 25? Thank you.
So we anticipate, obviously, the cost of delivering the service to rise. So the 3% will look to cover that. We will look to meet cost recovery and then maintain cost recovery. We will not look to make an additional surplus on that.
Councillor Mr. Clark.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I agree with the increases, because we shouldn't be asking taxpayers to subsidise in this area. One of the things I was concerned with, we're going digital on the applications. Will we be providing some form of booklet that people that haven't got internet can pick up, and it will be something that they could easily follow? And again, I think I asked this question before, have we done an assessment of our various registrar offices, that are they able to cope with people with disabilities, particularly those in a wheelchair?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. Over to you, James.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, whilst we are moving towards digital, it will not be our only option. There will still be opportunity to meet with people face to face, discuss, and also to have literature. And yes, all of our venues are disability compliant.
Thank you. Councillor Dunny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I would like to apologise for my 5 minute late.
Okay.
It's just my badge couldn't hold the door. I will have 3 comments. I think I have 2 questions, and I have probably a comment on the ceremonies. I would agree with Councillor Kay and Councillor Lee regarding the charges. And we are going through very hard times, and especially with the rise of a lot of utilities as energy, food, petrol, and it goes on. The prices, I think, for me, a bit too high. However, saying that, I would like my first question is, what's the turnover of the ceremonies on the County Council? If he can answer that question, please.
Okay, James, are you able to answer that for us, please?
Yes, so the income for ceremonies for weddings and civil partnerships, £661,150, which is currently £172,000 below the operational cost of delivery.
Okay, regarding that, do we have any bird ceremonies?
Sorry, can you please repeat that?
Councillor Dunny said birth ceremonies.
Birth ceremonies.
No, we don't. So the birth is undertaken by a registration, and that is completely separate to the ceremonies.
Is there any price for that?
So for a registration is free. The parents will have to purchase a certificate at a cost of £11.
Thank you. My next thing is coming to the cancellations. And Councillor Kayes, I mean, from his experience, he said that sometimes people, they cancel in the morning because they break out or for whatever reasons. Could we not use the system of having a deposit, and the cancellation has to be 3 days beforehand, and then you can get your deposit back, because a lot of places, they do that?
So yes, with the new structure, there will be a deposit. The one thing that we have within registration is a finite number of appointment slots. So the reason that we have gone for a period not so close to the ceremony date is that a large amount of the work is already done, And if the ceremony is cancelled within 4 weeks, due to the legal notice period required, that ceremony slot, we can't put anybody else back into that. So that's why we've gone for a 6-week period beforehand, and that is actually more favourable than a lot of local authorities who will actually insist in an 8 or a 12-week period. So we put it as close to the point where we think is right to do so.
Thank you very much. Just the last comment. I think we should look at the prices, and in my opinion, we should encourage people to get married and civil partnership, because it's needed, and that's how we can make a lot of things probably more stable and easier for our communities. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dunny. Councillor Key.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to ask too many questions all in one go. Could I ask if the staff have been consulted about this, or how the prices were actually, how they came about? Was it through a group of people getting together, or how did you put this package together? Thank you. Then I have one more question.
Okay, interesting question there, James. Over to you.
Yeah, so thank you for that. Income and expenditure analysis has been undertaken around the actual cost of delivering each ceremony type based on the financial cost, the time for each task that registrar needs to undertake. And yes, the wider registration staff have been consulted around this and have been cited on this proposal as well.
Thank you. My main concern really still remains the fact that a couple who want to get married in Sleaford, and I'm only using that because that's where I live, who just want a few guests at a simple service, will have to go from £100 to £340. I really think it needs looking at that the small ceremonies could be offered more widely, even if only at off-peak times, so that people who previously would have paid £100 will only pay 200 and forgotten 215. 215. It's still a big increase, but it's not as big as 340, and it would allow families to gather for a wedding, because the statutory facility only allows for 2 witnesses, which doesn't really suit most people unless it's just a formality. So I think really that would be my main concern over this huge increase for just a small wedding. And even if it were only offered on 2 mornings a week in the other registration offices, I think it would be really welcome. It's a rural county we live in. It's a long way for some people to get to these 4 places for this smaller service. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before we respond, James, I've got Councillor Woolley wishes to speak.
Thank you, Chairman, and probably James will correct me, but Councillor Key, you mentioned a couple of times the £300 odd. In the proposed model, James, help me out in a moment, it's an increase to 215 and 265 rather than the 300, but I think my main concern would still be, but look at how much it's still in deficit as well. And I hear you. I understand that from £100 to 215 is significant, but you know, there are a number of options, and you know, when all's said and done, we have got to at least try and get this service to at least wash its face.
Yeah, could I come back to that? The 215 is only available at 4 offices, and my point was, if a couple want to marry in Sleaford, other than going to Lincoln and paying 215, if they wanted to marry in Sleaford, and people often want to marry in certain places for all sorts of reasons, they'd have to pay for a medium ceremony of 340. And the 215 on the figure for the calculations for break-even does break even. So it's not going to add any cost to the service to offer that smaller service more widely at off-peak times when perhaps the office wouldn't be used. So that would be really something I think that would help a lot of couples who are struggling, because when you're planning a wedding, not everybody can afford £20,000 wedding. You know, people often have to do these things on a budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Key. James, do you want to come back on that one?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just to add a little bit wider context with that, So if you look at our neighbouring authorities, and Norfolk being one which is widely rural, their cheapest option starts at £415 to £450. So the 340 is considerably less than other local authorities are charging, but obviously we can take that away and have a think about that one.
Thank you. Yes, I did look at the figures for Norfolk. I did a bit of research because obviously it's an area that I'm interested in. And I thought how expensive the figures were there, but that doesn't really excuse us for putting our figures up to 340, I don't think. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm right in saying that the standard Church of England fees for a wedding is something like £500. That's without the organist and bells and whatever. So it just draws a comparison there.
Yeah, I mean it's a bit like the old story. If you don't put things up for a long time, it has a big impact when you do. And I know the fees go up each year, but this is a total reorganisation really, and maybe it is long overdue. It's just unfortunate the timing when money is tight.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
I just keep going on about the fact that we need to do something for people who just want a few guests at a simple wedding on a budget.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Yeah, thanks for letting me come back, Chair. It's just, I hear all the comments about having to increase this and the reasons why, and I don't dispute that's probably needed, but it's an incredibly bad time. People are exceptionally hard up at the minute. We've just come through a pandemic. There are going to be people who are hit by long COVID who can't go to work, all sorts of things. And I just wonder if we do absolutely have to put this up, which I'm not convinced that we do, would there be a way of people paying in some kind of instalments or spreading the cost in some way? Because you know what? Most of us should expect to be able to get married, and just because you haven't got the sort of numbers in income that are in this report, that really shouldn't be a bar. And it just doesn't feel right for me, because, you know, if we lived in a fair society where everyone had the same income, then yeah, be great, just increase it. But we don't, and I just wonder if there could be an option for people to pay over perhaps 3 payments or something like that. Thank you.
James.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Yes, absolutely. So the new IT system that we're going to introduce, you will be able to do that. So you'll be able to pay at the point of booking a proportion of the fee, and then you'll be able to pay in payments as the couple wish to. Whereas at the moment, you get contacted by the registration service shortly before the event and ask for full payment. So there will be that payment option available within the new system.
Okay, thank you. See, Councillor Key wishes to come back. You're on it today.
Am I
Councillor
allowed
Key,
one more
aren't you?
question, Mr. Chairman?
Okay, carry on.
It's a quick one. The large ceremonies, unless I've missed it, it doesn't actually say where they're going to be offered. It just says large ceremony.
No, that is correct. That there is if we are looking to extend our portfolio. So if we're able to bring new large venues on board over the next few years, that will be the price attributed to those.
Thank you. I'm going to ask any more. Thank you.
Can see no further speakers. Okay, so our actions of this committee are to consider the attached report and determine whether we support the recommendations to the Executive Councillor as set out on page 27 of the report. Also, that we agree that our comments highlighted in the discussion of this item are captured and passed on to the Executive Councillor ahead of their consideration of this report. Excuse me, I promise you it's not COVID. With a little bit of a reluctance about the times we're in and the finances, whatever, I'm going to move that the committee receives the report and supports the recommendations set out on page 27, and that our comments as captured are shared with the Executive Councillor for their consideration and decision between the 26th and 28th of January. Yes, and highlighting to the Executive these points you've raised about the times we're in, hard times, money's short and whatever, paying by instalments, and I hope all those things are captured and portrayed to the Executive. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Stokes is seconded. All those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? Just the one abstention. Thank you all for that. That is agreed. Okay, the next agenda item is agenda item 7, Trading Standards Impacts and Outcomes Framework. This item invites the committee to consider and comment on the delivery of trading standard services for the financial year 2020-2021. The report can be found on pages 39, should that really be 2020-2021, of this agenda pack. It says 2020-21, yep, okay. The report will be presented by Mark Keel, Trading Standards Manager, and we will also receive a visual presentation by Emma Milligan, Trading Standards Operational Delivery Manager, who is with us in the Council Chamber and will showcase some physical examples of unsafe goods, counterfeit goods and other. So, without further ado, over to you, Mark.
Good morning, everyone. Can I just thank the committee for the opportunity to submit this report highlighting the work of the Trading Standards Service. The report is based upon the 2020-2021 data we've submitted to the Association of Chief Trading Standards Officers for inclusion in their Impacts and Outcomes report into the value that local trading standards services deliver. This is the third year that we have submitted this information and the association have produced their report. However, the impact that the COVID-19 pandemic has had on consumers, businesses and trading standards service delivery means that the findings were not directly comparable to those of previous years. The period of work considered in this year's report return coincided with the most severe periods of the COVID-19 pandemic, which included the initial period of lockdown in the spring of 2020 and the period around Christmas and New Year of that year. In addition to the usual priorities of the service of tackling detriment and harm, supporting the local economy and promoting health and well-being, I've included examples of the challenges the pandemic presented to the service, how we adapted our working practices to continue to deliver against our strategic priorities, and some of the new demands placed on us arising from the introduction of new business restrictions that change frequently, changes in consumer shopping habits, the rush to meet new business opportunities, in particular the supply of PPE, and instructions from central government and national bodies, including the Food Standards Agency and the Office of Product Safety and Standards, which directly impacted on the way that we delivered. Whilst I do not plan to elaborate further on the content of the report at this time, I would welcome any questions you have arising from its content or about the trading standards work in general. I know that there are a number of new members of the committee who may not be familiar with our work, and we've produced a short presentation to show some of the variety that we undertake. I'd like to thank my colleagues Emma Milligan, Dan Brown and Angela Kane who have pulled this presentation together whilst being heavily involved in our response to the current avian flu outbreak. And I'll hand over to Emma who will be presenting, as already mentioned.
Okay,
Emma.
Mark, thank you. Any questions for Mark at this moment in time? No. Okay, we'll carry on. Emma.
Hi everybody, I'm Emma Milligan and I'm the Ops Manager for Trading Standards. So I'm going to show you some of the actual practical work that Trading Standards get involved in. Some of this is around some of the enforcement work that we do, and some of it's around some of the business advice work that we do. So I'm going to sort of sit here for a few minutes and show you some videos because I know that there's some people that are watching via Teams. But then I am going to come down on the floor and actually get you, if you want to, take part in some of the activities that we do as trading standards officers and how we screen test some of our products. So I'll try to give you a bit of a wide range of the things that we look at. So I'm going to start and look at the thunder snaps, so you can see the boxes at the front. So recently we seized large quantities of these, and they were causing lots of antisocial behaviour. I don't know if you know a lot about throwdowns, that they're easily accessible to, you buy them from a party type shop. Oh, is that me? Sorry, can you? Kids throw them down and they make a bit of a bang. These thunder snaps, as you'll see in the video that we've created for you, are extremely loud. They don't comply with important safety standards and around the noise levels. Also, some of the materials around them can cause serious damage to people's skins. And due to that, the government actually withdrew them from sale. So we were working with the National Office, which is the Office Products of Safety and Standards, to remove them from sale. Myself and a colleague, Dan Brown, as Mark's just spoken to, one of our principal officers, we thought the best way to demonstrate it to you is to actually show you these products and the difference between the legal and the illegal. So I'll let the video explain itself. Oh, we can't hear it. Sorry. So just while that's being fixed, obviously, as I say, my colleague and I worked on to show you around. I'm back on screen. Around the trying out the thunderslaps to give you a bit of an idea about the sound that they make. As I say, we did receive a number of complaints from different businesses around children throwing them in sort of shopping centres. And as I say, you will see when the video plays actually how loud they really are. We tested them outside, and my ears were still ringing afterwards. So hopefully we can get them going. Still no sound. Well, I'll tell you what, shall I move on to the next piece and then we can try and get the sound going. So I'm going to move on. So we've, if it does all fail and we can't, you can't see the video, we can either share it around afterwards, but also I have brought some with me, and if you did want to test them in the car park, I can demonstrate the two in the car park with you, okay? So yeah, we have got a few. So that's something a little bit extra if we can't get the sound going. So the next product that I wanted to talk to you about, I'll just see, because I've got some photos to show you, is around a company in Grantham, and it's actually due to the pandemic they had to change, as Mark's already mentioned in his report. Businesses really did have to change the way that they supplied to consumers because shops were closed. And the gentleman actually is a fudge producer, and he really, as I say, has changed the way he's producing his food. Through the relationship that we have with Business Lincolnshire, we have an officer, Angela Kane, who's seconded across there and provides invaluable business advice to startups of all different varieties. And the gentleman that I'm going to sort of speak to you a bit more about, and actually it's, again, something very unusual and something we don't normally do, is I have got some fudge for you to try to see what you think of it. So while they're trying to fix the video, I will bring around some of the samples. As I say, normally when we do food sampling, we're not allowed to eat it, are we?
You asked for it. You wanted samples bring to this committee.
It's like Dragon's Den, Mr. Chairman.
Oh dear.
Chairman, have we got to sign a disclaimer on this?
Yeah.
So there's a mint fudge and there's an orange fudge. And as I say, I do promise you that normally this goes through the panellists and we're not allowed to test it. It is this way. Okay, yeah?
Bring it back round.
Okay, so we're going to show you the difference between legal and illegal, unsafe fun snaps or throwdowns. So these are the legal ones that comply with legal safety standards. And listen to the difference. And another legal one.
Okay,
Okay,
going round.
so they can buy them from a shop. They're legal to buy. Kids can use them under supervision.
Okay then, so just a bit of order. While we're munching, are we ready for this one, Kiara? Can we get this on the screen? Yep. So, So your attention, please, for this demonstration.
Well, now I'll have another bit though, because it's lovely, that orange is. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to show you the difference between legal and illegal unsafe fun snaps or throwdowns. So these are the legal ones that comply with legal safety standards. And listen to the difference. And another legal one. Okay, and there you can buy them from any shop. They're legal to buy. Kids can use them under supervision. But these are the issues that we've had with the illegal ones. Completely different, a lot bigger, a lot noisier, and called antisocial behaviour. They're unsafe, they don't meet the safety standards, and listen to how loud they are.
Honestly, it is really loud in terms of the differences. We've got another little video at the end to hopefully show you the real comparison. As I say, if you did want to meet us in the car park after, then we'll show you some of the real ones going off. So back to the fudge. So that was a safety. Obviously, Thundersaps was a safety reactive complaint that we had. So that was our reactive team that went out and seized those, and then took legal action against the business that was behind selling those or advice, depending on where they were found. Now moving on to sort of the side of it, as I say, with the fudge, where we support business and we want them to, support them to grow and prosper. And as I say, we work in partnership with Business Lincolnshire. And the officer that supported Fudged Up, which is the sample that you've had a few moments ago, as I say, he really had to change the way he was pursuing his business because of COVID and the changes to shops closing. So we went online. Our officer provided the owner with 15 pieces of invaluable business advice around his labelling to ensure that his allergen information was correct. His durability dates were correct, the quid, so all around that important food labelling information there. She also helped him and supported him with traceability information, and also around compliance of his website, what he had to do if he had returns, and the important information that consumers should get when they purchase things online. Can they cancel? Can't they cancel? What does he do around refunds? And when I met with the business to collect the samples actually from him, he was saying how he couldn't have done a lot of what he'd done without the support of trading standards and and understanding that really complex legal advice around food safety. But he also said that it was now he was looking at the way he was going to market his business, and we operate something called a primary authority scheme, where we work in partnership with the business. So we've got businesses like the Lincolnshire Co-op, Backavall, Smithies that we support, and it is on a cost recovery type of work that we do. And he's looking at joining that provision now because he wants to get into different outlets, places like Selfridges, Harrods, and different garden centres. So it's really exciting to see a Lincolnshire business that's doing really well, and especially through a pandemic, and change the way they're working. And we've been able to support that through advice and information that we've given to him through the links that we have with Business Lincolnshire. And I know that he's picked up other information via Business Lincolnshire. So I can forward it round afterwards, but his case study is actually on the website, so you can actually have a read and see how the work that we've done and other people within the council has helped and made his business grow. So I'm going to go back to my presentation now, if that's okay.
Okay.
Right. So it's probably a topic that you know Trading Standards for quite well, is our work on illegal and unsafe tobacco. I know it's something that we talked about in other scrutiny sessions, so I wanted to sort of give you a bit of a demonstration today around unsafe tobacco. So I'm going to show another short video of Dan again, and just explaining. And again, if you want to, I've got some samples for you to have a go, and that's why you've got the highlighter pen. So it's not a test, but obviously it's there for you.
Right, we're going to quickly show you how to screen test these cigarettes to show you if they comply with the RIP safety standard. Right, we have genuine cigarettes here. You can buy from a retailer in the UK, legal cigarettes. I've cut open the the paper and remove the tobacco. And if we run this highlighter down the paper, you can clearly see here two different marks, distinct marks, and these are the speed bumps within the paper that allow the cigarette to self-extinguish. They're a safety feature in a legal cigarette. These are some illegal cigarettes that have been seized by trading standards. And if I do the same thing, you can clearly see those distinguishing speed bumps are absent. So if this cigarette was left unattended, it would burn all the way down, meaning it's more likely to cause a house fire if left unattended. Right, we're going to quickly show you how to screen test.
So displayed on the screen are two different types of tobacco. So obviously the legal ones. I'm sure that you're all aware now that tobacco is now in plain packaging. There's no promotional information allowed on there. And there's lots of different legal advice that needs to be provided on that tobacco and those cigarettes. A lot of the work that we do also around, we obviously do the safety side of things that we've just talked about, and we work with the Fire and Rescue Service and Public Health. And those of you will be aware that we've done campaign work with Julie Grant, because her mum sadly passed away in a house fire, and that was linked to illegal cigarettes, and that's actually coming up to its 10th anniversary this year. So we propose to work quite nationally, so locally with our fire service, but nationally with the Chartered Trading Standards Institute to publicise that and lead the way in the work that we've previously done with our first of its kind national prosecution, which would have been about 6 years ago now. It's something that we now do very regularly, but it was something that first started here in Lincolnshire. As I say, also as part of the work that we do around tobacco, we look at the underage sales and ensuring that children aren't being able to get access to tobacco when they shouldn't be. So I'll come around with the samples for you, and if you want to have a go doing the testing, I'll bring it now.
It's all right, I saw it on there, thank you.
We enforce so many different pieces of legislation, and I've only given you a very small snapshot of what we do today. And as I say, we've been working on the avian flu outbreak for the last 5 weeks. But as I say, this is just some bits that we do. So if there's any questions that you've got for me, I'll take those, but then I'll do the last little video.
I'm aware Councillor Danny's itching to ask you a question, so we'll go to that now.
the people bringing cigarettes back from holiday, as long as they bring it back for their own use, there's no issue with that, and as long as they're bringing it back within the prescribed quantity, there's no issue with that. It's when they're bringing suitcases back through and smuggling them through customs control to sell, that's where problems arise. We do get complaints from members of the public and information through regarding people who sell from home, who market through Facebook and other social media sites, and where we get sufficient information to support a court warrant, then we'll take action against those people. Second part of the question. The paper, yes. So cigarette papers, genuine cigarette papers, would have the ignition propensity speed bumps within them. Counterfeit ones, again, you'd run the risk of those not being there. There are occasional reports about them. I can't say we've seized any. But obviously we would keep our eye open for them and respond to any complaints about that.
Yeah.
I would be, oh, sorry. Sorry. I mean, it's legal for me to bring it, even it's illegal, and I can burn myself. So what is the health and safety here? So does our customs have to check and, you know, make sure that it's not illegal cigarettes?
Well, I think you're importing, you're bringing them back for personal use. Like I say, as long as you're within the legal limit, customs won't interfere with you. You know, they won't stop you bringing that back. One of the things we do is try and promote this message widely, which is why we do some work with fire and rescue, and we regularly run social media campaigns around the dangers of smoking cigarettes, particularly the illicit ones that don't have the safety measures in there, to try and raise the public's awareness, to make sure that they buy from reputable sources, and as far as possible, you know, they're buying from legitimate traders.
Thank you. Supposedly, I went abroad. I spent on my return ticket £40, and I don't know how many cigarettes I'm allowed to have. 200, I think. It's 200. Okay, that's okay. 200, which will cost me probably in the black market £40 or £50 I will spend. But if I buy the same amount in England, the United Kingdom, it will cost me probably £400. So if I'll be that generous, and I will tell to my friend, take a pack. And that pack will cause him fire and burn his house, or probably damage the house, cause harm to him or to his family. Will that person will be, if it's proven that is the illegal cigarette to cause him the fire, will be eligible for a lawsuit?
I think if it would, you know, if somebody supplied a packet of cigarettes that somebody had paid for, then yes, there may be some civil comeback, but I'm not an expert in that area. I think you would have to speak to a civil litigation lawyer to be 100% sure on that answer. But you know, sort of morally, and you know, it would certainly come up in a coroner's court, I would expect, as the cause of the incident.
Okay. Mark, just for a bit of clarity there, I suspect that a lot of people buy cheaper cigarettes mainly to avoid the excise duty, which they'd buy on the plane or they get from a supermarket in Spain or Greece or wherever. And I guess those sort of cigarettes on the plane or these supermarkets would actually have the safety rings in them, yeah? But these are more backstreet activities, I guess, in other countries, yeah?
That's right. The stuff that you would buy in a legitimate Spanish supermarket is it's subject to the same legal requirements around the ignition propensity as the UK. It was European legislation.
Does that provide a bit more clarity, Councillor Dunny?
Yes, but it just, I think, I think that the subject itself, I think it has more dimensions. It's not, I mean, as I said, I'm shocked because we can tackle the illegal cigarettes in the shops, but then we cannot tackle them if somebody brings them for his own use, and then he can spread them around as a gift to his friends. So this is where it's, for me now, it starts just, what is the law here? Because we are closing the doors on certain things, but we are allowing them to come from the window, which is, I mean, if you understand my positions, is another thing which is I want to come back to. It came to my attention by a shop owner in Boston that they're bringing beer from, I think, I don't know if it's Russia or Lithuania. I cannot confirm which country. And it has cannabis inside. I don't know if it's legal. That's another question. And they're selling it in the shops.
Cannabis, there are some cannabinoid foods that are being considered, but they're novel foods, so it would have to go through a registration process to actually be approved for sale. So I would say it's probably not at the moment.
That was an admission of the shop owner I was talking to. He said, no, we have a beer with cannabis inside it and we're selling it to everyone. And I was shocked to hear that, so I leave it with you.
Okay, thank you. Can't answer that one. Councillor Key.
Yes, thank you. Regarding the cigarettes, basically, as far as I can see, on a national scale, it should be illegal to bring them into the country for your own use or anybody else's use. If the cigarettes themselves don't comply with our laws, they shouldn't be brought in at all. But that's not a matter for you, I'm sure. But you can probably put pressure on. My question is to do with the websites, the report on websites, because it says that you've looked at 44 websites and 33 were non-compliant, which is a huge proportion. So I think it's obviously a lack of training, probably, but something obviously needs to be done about that, because obviously, by the sound of it, most websites don't comply with trading standards. And if I could just finally say, and I should have said this at the beginning, I did have cause to have contact with trading standards myself when I set up a business many years ago. It was Lincolnshire Trading Standards, and it was extremely helpful and got me on the right track, which made a huge difference to my business. So I think it's important that people know that although some people should be scared of you, and we know we know who they are, for the vast majority of people, it should be a positive experience dealing with trading standards and helping them get on the right track with business. So thank you. But my point is the websites. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a number of questions, if I may. Could you explain a bit more? You mentioned cost recovery when dealing with people.
Yes, the primary authority scheme and some of the more bespoke business advice that we provide, we do on a cost recovery basis. It's basically the officer time for pay-as-you-go, the officer time to research the question and provide the advice to the business. With primary authority, it's a bit more of a contract. We initially set up an agreement where we agree to provide so many hours advice for them through the year, and that's for a set fee. And we work with them through the year to provide that advice. If they require more hours, then we can top that up. But it is basically just cost recovery for officer time.
Thank you for that. I noticed a bit about intelligence gathering. How regular do you have meetings with the various agencies that you're in partnership with?
It would depend on the type of subject for the regularity of meetings, but we have information sharing agreements with all of them. So the actual intelligence that we share flows fairly frequently. We don't just wait for meetings, it moves between us and other agencies on an ongoing basis as we receive it.
Thank you for that. Scams obviously are a big problem these days, whether it be phone calls, internet or mail-in shots. In order to sort of try and safeguard our public, could we be a bit more proactive in putting the scams out publicly, whether it be newspaper or radio interviews, or possibly even using the TV, local radios, local TV stations?
We have a team of people who are regularly reviewing the information as it comes through to us, the complaints and the intelligence. Where they do spot a particular trend in those types of complaints, they will put information out through comms. We obviously put information out through social media, and we share other people's information if they raise a particular scam. Unfortunately, there's such a proliferation of them, and they change very quickly. They change to the environment. It didn't take very long for COVID-related scams to appear, whether it was around Trust and Trace or vaccine passports, that sort of thing. We've had lots of information about those through national media as well as ourselves. So they're very difficult to monitor, but we try to get that information out where we can. And we can certainly look at ways that we can be a bit more efficient with that. Like I say, it does change frequently. The standard bank email thing is fairly common, and it happens all the while. And there's lots of sort of national media. The banks put a lot of information out. Other citizens advice, those types of people. But it's the new and the ones that catch people out, and that's where we try and pick up on those and get that information out to the public as quickly as we can.
We have actually been really lucky that the BBC and the work that we do through, because actually Chris is sat with us at the moment, who does a lot of, works with us on our comms strategy, but we have a really large following on our social media accounts, so our Twitter and Facebook. But what that also allows us to do, it doesn't necessarily, I know that you were talking about some more vulnerable people in society that maybe don't look at Twitter and Facebook. However, people like Melvin on BBC Lincolnshire pick up on our tweets, and we're often called, when we put something out that's come through our duty officer, called up to go straight on and speak over the phone on Radio Lincolnshire. So we do have huge amounts of support through our local, Peter Levy's show, I can't think. Look North, and as I say, especially through BBC Lincolnshire Radio, we've had some great support with them for our scams.
Yes, I noticed there's an entry reference training for officers, and you'd set aside quite a bit of money there. How are we doing for vacancies within your organisation, and possibility of recruiting possibly star performers from the university?
We're actually pretty well staffed at the moment, so we don't currently have vacancies. But as far as the university goes, I do work with the law students at the university. I go and give them a lecture on trading standards and consumer protection. And if we do have vacancies, I always let them know that they're there.
There was also a statement made on page 46, item 8.3. It mentioned EU funding. Presumably that's going to finish shortly?
Well, the EU funding was actually for the role that Angela's carrying out with the business Lincolnshire. And actually that's just been extended for a further year. So presumably it will disappear at some point, but we'll make the best of it while it's still available.
That's actually the funding that we used for Fudged Up. That's part of that funding there. For the fudge samples that that advice there, that's what that funding's linked to.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to make a comment. Bottom of page 43, you talk about PPE and hand sanitisers. I think that's really important work because people on low incomes want to be as safe as the rest of us. And, you know, they'll spend their money and they're going to look for the cheapest. And this will be what this is. And if it doesn't actually work, they're going to be lulled into a false sense of security, you know, and that is really worrying. So I think this is really pertinent. And I'm pleased that, of course, you would expect that to happen, but I'm pleased it is happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Clark.
Thank you both for the presentation. Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick questions. You mentioned that there were 17 premises that you found, going back to the tobacco again, where you'd found the illicit sale of tobacco. Were they scattered across the county, or did you find that they were they're more centralised? So is there a pattern to where you're finding stuff? Thank you.
Yeah, there are a number of towns, Lincoln, Boston, Grantham, Spalding, where we find it quite often. Some of the smaller towns, Sleaford, Louth, those types of places, can't say we've particularly had much intelligence or interaction there, but there are groups of streets in some of the larger towns where we find it's fairly prolific.
Can I just come back as well as a trading standard service? Where are you finding the most pressures for the service? So what are the most inquiries that trading standards are getting, or the most intelligence that you're receiving that you're finding not that again, and you've got to go back to it? Where are you finding? Is it scams? Is it tobacco? Is it, you know, where food hygiene, you know, not being prepared properly, like you've just shown us this morning? That was very nice fudge, by the way. Enjoyed that. Thank you very much.
It's a bit of a mixture, and it depends on the type of law that we're looking at. So if we're looking at the sort of breaches of contract law, it's still very much around motor cars, mobile phones, you know, particularly where people are entering into contracts. So that's where the civil side of things tends to sit around the sort of high end, high expenditure that people have. As far as criminal law goes, yes, it is the illicit tobacco, it's the doorstep crime and the rogue trading. Again, where people are often investing thousands in home improvements, that type of thing. So we get a lot of complaints and intelligence around that aspect. Some food establishments and some types of food, particularly allergens, is always an increasing concern for us. And there's obviously new rules come in with the Natasha's law this year that we'll be looking at doing some work on through next year. And I suppose as well, safety related is a concern for us. And actually getting the information, making sure that people do complain where they have an incident, so that we can look at that and follow it up. I suppose going forward, we're keeping half an eye on EU exit and what that means for us. Obviously, a lot of the legislation that we currently work with was formed with our relationship with the EU, and that's where it comes from. And as we begin to diverge from those, then that will obviously have implications for us training-wise, and making sure that we can get out there and provide the business advice. So we're keeping a quite good eye on what's happening there.
Okay, Councillor Key.
Sorry, could I just come back on the websites, which I mentioned earlier, because I think it got lost a bit with another question. Obviously, with the COVID situation, a lot of businesses have gone online, like the one that we've been discussing this morning. And I haven't looked, but on your website, is there sort of, for someone wanting to set up and go online with their business, particularly food, I think this relates to food sites, could there be, and if there isn't already, some basic guidance as to the sort of things you need to do before you go online? Because it's no good going online and then thinking about it, is it? You need to do it first.
Right. What we have on our website is a link to something called Business Companion, which is operated by the Chartered Trading Standards Institute. Depending on your type of business, all you have to do is just answer some simple questions, and it walks you through the process. And what it produces at the end is a PDF for you with guidance on all of the areas of legislation that may affect you. And obviously, once people have had a look at that, if they then have more specific questions about the in-depth labelling of food products, for example, or technical files for something that they wanted to import to ensure that it's safety compliant, then they can come to us for that more detailed advice.
I mean, 33 websites non-compliant out of 44 is a lot. So perhaps those 33 ought to have done that. It's getting that message to them first, though, isn't it?
Again, we heavily promote our business advice, but it is, as people alluded to, it's a bit of a trust issue, I think. I think they think if you come to a regulator, the first port of call for us is to prosecute you if you're not doing it wrong. And it really isn't. I can't say that enough. It makes our life so much easier if businesses are compliant. If they're compliant, then that frees up our resources to go and look for the people that aren't. Which is
I think that's the message we need to get out, because that was my experience all those years ago, and people are a bit scared when you mention trading standards, and that's the hurdle, isn't it?
It is.
Thank you.
It is.
And that's really why we are going through the Business Lincolnshire banner as well, and having the seconded officer over there, so that the businesses don't see us as that enforcement arm. We are working with Business Lincolnshire, and we can go deeper in the web, looking at the website sort of inquiries like you've been saying. So, as I say, that's really where we are pushing businesses to go through Business Lincolnshire to then come to us for the different services then we offer, and they can look at the business as a whole. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Buttroyd, followed by Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Chairman. Just 3 questions, if I may. Just to pick up on the website, do we work with companies? Because most people, when they set up a website, do it through an online system. So surely if that system's set up to work and to comply with the law, then that seems to be a logical place to start, really. I just wondered. I'll do them all 3 if you like. I did the test. Does that test work if you didn't take the cigarette apart? I'm just curious.
It is easier to do it when the cigarette is, when the actual tobacco's out of the cigarette. That's the easiest way to do it. So there was, depending on which bag you got some that were legal and some that were illegal. So you might have got the speed bumps or you might not have done.
I've got both.
Oh, you've got both. There you go.
So
That's good.
until you put the pen on, there's no way of telling, is there?
You can maybe just see them from the outside, but the easiest way is when the tobacco's taken out of the cigarette. You can actually see it a lot more with the highlighter, and that's we've learned that because obviously for our legal prosecutions to then go off for testing and we get a legal report back, but it's a way of our officers screen testing them quickly on site. We were showed it by actually one of the tobacco manufacturers, so we could easily see if they were compliant or illegal.
And then, sorry, my last question really was on the funder snaps. So that they were being sold in our stores in Lincolnshire. Is there no kite mark or British Standard or any, or was that forged? I just wondered. That was my final question.
I'll do the thunder snap a bit first. So yeah, so basically they are labelled in a way that as a normal consumer you would probably think that they are compliant, but actually they don't comply with the standard at all. So I think if you can happily look at the box, I can show it around. But I think at first sight, when you look at the back, there's a load of instructions and different notes to say that it complies with this, but actually the product doesn't comply. When it's been off for testing, it doesn't comply with that throwdown standard. And it's all around as I say, in terms of the how loud they are. So there is another tiny video at the end actually that might give the comparisons of the differences that, you know, compared to a normal throwdown. So yeah, they look very well labelled to a normal consumer, but actually when you drill down the information, it's just not correct what's on them. Okay.
Okay.
Did you want
Councillor Gray.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. The report highlights the strategic priorities of the trading standards, and I think when we often think of trading standards, we think of the more negative aspects of your work, and I don't think the public often realise the diverse range of the work you do at trading standards. I think Emma's presentation really highlighted the fact that the officers are there to help. We heard about the fudge producer, and the fudge was delicious, I have to say, but we heard about the fudge producer and how the trading standards officer helped them diversify during COVID. They supported with their compliance of their website, etc., etc. So there's a lot there in the toolkit of trading standards, which often we don't realise as members of the public. So thank you for the excellent work you do, because we often don't realise all those other things that are going on there.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. On page 46, about the balance in the budget, metrology services, not to be confused with meteorology services, but could you just tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah, it's our verification work. It's just ensuring that weights and measures are legal. We do offer that service out to businesses if they need scales testing or weights testing. They just need to contact us, and we can do that.
Okay, thank you. Kiara, did you want to
play the last video?
Okay, you'll see the last video, yeah?
Today, apologies for that. I can forward it. We can forward it round. We're going to put it on our social media, so if anybody wants to take a look, it also then you'll see some of the work we've done scans as well. Oh, here we go.
Apologies, no, the sound's not compliant. Apologies, we'll circulate that.
Okay, if you could then, please, yeah, sure, yeah. Okay, have we any further speakers? Councillor Stokes? No. Oh, Councillor Dunny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one thing. What made are they? Are they made in United Kingdom or abroad?
These were imported from abroad. I'm not actually sure whether, I think this is made in China, but no, they were imported from abroad by an importer into the UK.
Mr. Chairman, is there any seizing of any alcoholic drinks which is there illegal?
We do on occasion seize alcoholic drinks, so it tends to be vodkas that we tend to seize that are counterfeit. In the past, we've seized them where they've had high levels of isopropanol. It's not something that we've actually found recently, but we do have different searching techniques where we look for counterfeit, as I say, vodka tends to be the main trend, but we have seen counterfeit whiskies and wines as well. But we work very closely with the Lincolnshire Police licensing team and with HMRC, so there's also looking at the tax implications and whether a premise is correctly licensed. So we may seize alcohol that doesn't meet those other legal requirements, but trading standards would normally look at it purely for a food safety, the food safety side, and looking to see whether that product's safe for human consumption. And as I say, some of the products we have found have not been safe for human consumption.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, Mark and Emma, for that presentation. The actions for this committee is that we're invited to consider and comment on the contents of the report and the delivery of the trading standards services for the financial year 2020-2021. I'm going to move that we endorse the report and that our comments as recorded are noted. Can you please raise your hand if you agree? Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We'll now move on to item 8, which is the Public Protection and Community Scrutiny Committee Work Programme. This item is on pages 49 to 53 of the agenda pack. Over to you, Chiara.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My name is Chiara Caggiano and I'm the Scrutiny Officer for this committee. I would like to remind you that this is a standing agenda item reviewed at each meeting as part of maximising the effort of our shifting our focus to the right areas. Following the issuing of this agenda, there hasn't been any changes to the work programme. However, there has been some communication towards members asking for ideas for the work programme as it is being currently built for the next year. May I just remind you that the areas that we shift our focus to include, but are not restricted to, volunteering support, adult education, financial inclusion, community engagement and development, community hubs, library services and archives, heritage services, preventing and reducing crime, tackling domestic abuse, fire and rescue and emergency response, trading standards, emergency planning, road safety, reducing antisocial behavior, and registration, celebratory and coroner's services. So if you have any contributions, I'll be more than happy to note these. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry I didn't email you back. To be honest, I just forgot. I'm very concerned about the progress of the Ermine Library Hub. I attended a meeting in the middle of November where the provider, who is going to be Bishop Grosseteste, they were pretty much ready to go. And we're now from the middle of November almost into February, and there's been no further news of that. I would request respectfully that we have an update to the next meeting, please, just to know where we are with that and when that's actually going to happen, just in light of the fact that BG were ready to go, you know, and we're going to be like, what, 3-4 months down the line by then. So if there is a hitch, and not something as basic as, oh, the officers are working on it, I'd like a little bit more detail than that, please, you know, about if there's a delay, what that delay is, because people are waiting for that to open. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Happy to take this back. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Dunny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will just come here on the social behavior. Most of our constituents, sometimes they are worried because when somebody's acting which is against our safety in our communities, they call the police, and sometimes the police, they don't arrive, and sometimes they don't deal with the issue, and it's a concern for the communities, probably all around Lincolnshire, probably around the country. Can we raise the point that how fast and how quick they react when a call made against a social behavior, especially if it's repeated at all times? Please, thank you.
Okay, noted. Any other comments? Chiara, the Magistrate Inspector of Police and Fire and Rescue Services produced a report on Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue. Will that come to us at any point?
I can most certainly check with the Chief Fire Officer and let you know.
Okay,
thank you.
Councillor Key.
This doesn't concern this committee, but I thought it worth mentioning that in another area of council work, I came across quite a backlog that had built up because of the COVID problem. So maybe when performance reporting is included, we could have some sort of update from each of the areas that report on the effect of COVID and what's being done to address any backlog of work. Because that was something that came up, as I say, not in one of our areas, but in another area, and it must apply to some of our work too.
Sure.
So thank you.
Noted.
Noted.
Noted. Good. Okay, no further speakers, so I'm going to move that we note the report and approve the existing work programme as detailed in pages 49 to 54. Can I ask you to raise your hands if you agree, please? Okay, thank you. For the next item, we now sit as the Crime and Disorder Committee. And the first item is the adoption and publication of the Domestic Abuse Strategy 2021 to 2024. This item invites updates the committee. This item, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, this is not the...
Okay, we've got a technical hitch here.
Apologies, I don't know how that got stuck there. Safer Lincolnshire Partnership Review and Annual Update.
Okay.
Apologies, this is my bad.
So is this copy and pasted last report or something, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I must have slipped.
Sorry. And I must have slipped too. So it's the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership.
Review and Annual Update. Yeah.
Okay. And who's presenting that?
Sarah Berry, the rest of
Sarah.
us, correct.
Okay, so if Sarah's with us, are you there, Sarah?
Yes, I am, but actually Claire Seaborn, the Partnership Board Manager, is going to present the report.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So this is the annual report to the committee updating on the activity of the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership. So as part of the background section, I've provided a refresh in that it's a statutory requirement for all local authority areas to have in place a community safety partnership. So in Lincolnshire, we've come together as an informally merged partnership and are known as the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership. I've listed as bullet points the statutory duties, which are the responsibility of the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership to comply with. In the second section, provided a brief summary of the progress of the current strategy. And we're very much an evidence-based partnership and set our priorities based on the production of a strategic assessment. This was last produced in 2017, which informed our priorities for our 2018 to 21 strategy. Those current priorities being antisocial behaviour, domestic abuse, fraud, reducing offending, modern slavery. And the report provides some highlights in terms of delivery against those areas of business. So moving on to section 3, a new strategic assessment has been produced late last year to inform and refresh the strategy moving into 2022. This time around, the assessment has been produced as a tri-board product, so not only serving the purposes of the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership, but also for the Safer Lincolnshire, Lincolnshire Safeguarding Adults Board and Lincolnshire Safeguarding Children's Partnership. We don't believe that there's a precedent for this approach anywhere nationally. The purpose of this approach is to support the individual partnerships in setting their respective priorities, but also identify opportunities for joint areas of working between the three boards. The assessments are very much a forward-looking document, taking into account the changing environment, particularly including the impact of the pandemic. So I have inserted a diagram there. So this illustrates the priorities that we've agreed going forward. So recognise that there's some pretty broad statements in there in terms of what's been listed as a focus. We're currently in the process of drawing up a delivery plan in respect of those, which will be ready for the 1st of April this year. It's important to note that in setting the delivery plan, our objectives will be very specific, very targeted, with clear expected outcomes and timescales assigned to those areas of work. Running in parallel with the strategic assessment, we conducted a health check of the partnership to ensure compliance with statutory duties and our effectiveness. We utilised a number of methodologies in carrying out that review and had excellent engagement from partners across the board. In conclusion, the review found the partnership to be compliant with statutory duties and to be operating well. The ethos of the partnership, however, is one of continuous development, and as such, we've identified some opportunities within the review which will be implemented going forward, and certainly in preparation for the commencement of our new strategy period, as I say, on the 1st of April this year. In section 4, I've highlighted the key areas of contribution to the partnership by Lincolnshire County Council and specifically the Safer Community Service. And in summary and conclusion, the partnership has made significant progress over the past year and is in a strong position moving forward into the new period. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Double act here. I don't know who to go to first. Yeah, Councillor Mrs. Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that. I would like to ask, please, about the community trigger and how many times that has been requested over the last, say, 12 months. I notice in the report that it's been refreshed, it's been re-looked at, but there was a panorama programme on about that last night, about community trigger, and about the fact that people need to be able to come forward with confidence about asking about their case as a victim and to make sure that that's properly looked at. So I would like to know how many times that has been requested across Lincolnshire, please.
Okay.
I would be struggling to give you a specific figure. I can look into that and get back to you. It's district councils that have that responsibility as opposed to Lincolnshire County Council. I do know, though, that we only took in a handful of cases, sort of 5 or 6 over the course of a year, so certainly not big numbers at all. But the community trigger policy is currently being refreshed, and that's out to consultation with partners at the moment. But as I say, I can feed in some definite figures if that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, Mr.
Sorry, can I just come back on
ahead.
that? You say that it's only been a few requests, but is that because people are worried about approaching the police and that they don't have confidence in the police service? Because we are getting and seeing reports that are rather negative right across the constabularies across the country. So is that about fear of approaching the police and not being taken seriously, and is that being investigated, please? Because it's really important issue to make sure that people are held to account, whichever organisation they might be working for. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not aware that it is an issue in terms of fear. I think it might be more an awareness of the option of the community trigger process, and a lot of the work that the Antisocial Behavior Core Priority Group has been doing over the past year is raising awareness and engagement with the public. So there's been an awful lot of work in terms of tidying up the websites of all of the agencies involved in antisocial behaviour, so that people kind of get to the right place first time rather than being sort of passed from pillar to post. So it's definitely an area of focus for the core priority group over the last year, and I think that might be more of the issue rather than a kind of fear aspect. But again, I would probably need to get some better advice in terms of that from the district council colleagues.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mr. Clark.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I've got a number of questions. I'll come at you one at a time, if I may. On antisocial behaviour, there appears to be a pretty good working relationship with the various agencies, but I couldn't see any comment about how is this working for the victims. And certainly, could you tell us how many incidents are at the present under investigation?
Again, apologies, I'd be struggling to give you specific numbers. There's a number of different recording mechanisms for that, because obviously, as you've highlighted, there's the police reports, but also district councils, there's housing associations, and to kind of pull them into one place isn't something that we've got access to. As I've also mentioned, in terms of working with the victims, there are numerous activities underway in terms of the core priority group for antisocial behaviour, specifically, as I say, in terms of making sure that victims are supported. There's been a project which has been labelled under that customer journey piece of work. So again, supporting victims to engage with the right agency at the right point and get that kind of support that they require.
Okay, regarding domestic abuse, I notice it said that there's a drafting of a strategy and a delivery plan. Has this now been completed?
Sarah, do you want to come in terms of that last question?
Sorry,
first?
yeah, if I can come in there. So just going back to the point about antisocial behaviour, and as practice over the last few years, for each of the separate priorities, we do intend to bring back a more detailed report on each of the priorities. So hopefully we'll be able to pick up some of those points that you've raised on antisocial behaviour within those more specific points, because I think they're really important to address. On domestic abuse, you will see that it isn't a priority moving forward for the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership, because it now has its own Lincolnshire Domestic Abuse Partnership following the changes to the statutory requirements and duties on the local authority. So that strategy has now been drafted and published, and will be covered in more specific detail when we bring a paper on domestic abuse. We will be bringing a number of papers on domestic abuse to subsequent committees, especially around some of the major commissioning work that's currently under plan.
Thank you for that. And I read on page 57 you mentioned modern slavery, and you mentioned a project that you did last year about making awareness about the helpline. Is that to be repeated soon? And also, has the social media pack been completed?
Claire, Sarah?
Sorry, Claire, I'll let you answer that one.
Sorry, can you just repeat that first part of that question?
Yes, there was a project last year where you highlighted the awareness of a helpline for those people that might be suffering. Have you got plans for another repeat of that, and when?
I'm not aware of any plans. As you'll also have noticed, modern slavery isn't a priority for the Safe Lincolnshire Partnership going forward. We've been in conversation with police in particular. I think what we've recognised is that we've done an awful lot of work over the last 3 years whilst modern slavery has been a priority, and we've got it in a position now where it's, rather than needing to be a priority, we can continue with business as usual. So we are very much looking towards the group that the police are running to engage with that. We're linking the partners that we've engaged through our process, a lot of charitable organisations into that group as well. So I'm not aware of any kind of social media campaign, but I'm sure that that's something that they will have on their agenda to be looking at going forward.
Could I have an answer reference to the social media pack, please?
I think it would be very much a kind of a similar response, really, in terms of that's something that I'm sure that group will be looking at going forward.
So it hasn't been completed yet, then?
I'm going to have to go back to that group, to be honest. I'm not aware that it's been completed. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, I'll take it you'll get back to us, Sarah and Claire, on that matter, yeah? That was a yes, I take it. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Moving on, Councillor Lee.
Thanks, Chair. Just briefly, I just wanted to support Councillor Nicola Clark's comments about the trigger process, and just formally request that we bring this back to committee as an agenda item for some robust scrutiny, just for some transparency, because that's our role, isn't it? We're a scrutiny committee, so we need some numbers, and we need to look at the possible causes that those numbers are low, high, whatever, and I think that can only be beneficial. So going back to the work programme, can we bring this back without too much delay, please, if possible? Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, I certainly saw that programme on Panorama last night about the domestic abuse trigger, and not many authorities was actually taking it up, were they? But Councillor Clark, Mrs. Clark.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Lee. Just sort of looking at this report, I don't feel, and I don't mean to be critical, I mean to be a critical friend, I don't feel that we've had enough information sitting now as a Crime and Disorder Scrutiny Committee for us to look at it more thoroughly, to scrutinise, to allow us to scrutinise. And those are the points actually that I was trying to bring up, of the very thing that we've just been talking about. And also from our partners, I mean, if the districts are pulling information together and our other partners are pulling information together, and if we're going to sit as the Crime and Disorder Scrutiny Committee, we need to have that information in front of us so that we're not confusing the officers who quite rightly have said, I don't have access to that information, it's another partner. But if it's going to come to this committee for us to look at it properly, then we need to have all of that information together so that we can look at it properly, because it impacts on all of our communities right across the county. So we need the information so that we can all be effective scrutineers for all of our areas. And that information really is quite important. And like you say, if other councils haven't picked it up either, we need to be vigilant. And so really now sitting as this other group. Well, I think we need to be looking at bringing in some more work around this so that we can tie it all together, because it ties into community engagement. We're looking at antisocial behaviour. There are some horrific antisocial behaviour issues right across the country, but we do have them in our own county. Not as bad as some of those that I've seen, but we do have them. And it would help us to understand how we can help our partners to address that. By bringing in and using and looking at and scrutinising other things that we can bring into our divisions, because they all tie in together. So I think really for this report, it's not a very good report because we haven't had access to all the information. If you could consider that, please, Chair, I'd be very grateful.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Claire or Sarah, would you like to come back on that?
Yeah, can I come back on that? So this report is definitely a highlight report. It is a summary, very accept, it is very much a high-level summary of work in the past, the previous the current priorities that we currently have, and as we move into another 3-year period, highlighting those priorities that we've adopted for the next period. So I totally accept there is minimal information there, but probably in a planned way. I would like to give some reassurance on antisocial behaviour. We have a very strong partnership across a multitude of partners on antisocial behaviour in Lincolnshire, and really importantly, we've adopted that as an ongoing priority. I'm not sure we'll ever totally solve antisocial behaviour as there's as new young people come through, but we are trying to address that through a partnership approach, right from the work we start in schools to putting in protections in the community. And we can certainly bring a much more detailed report on antisocial behaviour for a future meeting, and we can do that soon. And likewise, we'd like to do that for every one of the priorities that we've got moving forward, to have a much more deeper dive and scrutiny into that, each of those subject matters in future meetings, if that's acceptable for everyone.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Key.
Sorry, I would just like to pick up something there, which I just happened to hear. Antisocial behaviour isn't just young people. I think that could have come across as, I'm sure that's probably not what she meant, but that's how it appeared to me. Antisocial behaviour is often not young people. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and apologies for that mistake. You know, one of the areas that we are looking at, that we've got quite a lot of data on, and we need to understand what's behind it, is things like neighbourhood disputes between neighbours and around there. So certainly, definitely agree. Antisocial behaviour isn't just young people.
That was certainly mentioned last night. I think a dispute started because one neighbour was feeding the birds or something, and matters got out of hand. So yeah, thank you. No further speakers. The actions for this committee. Oh, firstly, thank you, Sarah and Claire, for that presentation. The actions of this committee is to consider and comment on the report, endorse the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership Plan to reduce crime, disorder and antisocial behaviour in our county. I'm going to move that the committee endorse the report and Safer Lincolnshire Partnership Plan, and that we request further updates on the progression of the plan to be brought back. Can you please raise your hand if you agree? Okay, that's all agreed. Thank you. That concludes and brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you everyone for your attendance, and you may now leave the chamber and Teams link. Not forgetting that Emma has invited you outside for demonstration. Can you just raise your hand if you want to go out there to see the demonstration rather than... Yeah, we've got one or two, yeah. Okay, so we'll see you outside then, Emma. Thank you. No, there's not any here. Okay.